slides. Oh.
Got it.
Yes, got it.
All right, so everybody's in from the waiting room now. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
Hello.
Yes.
Welcome.
Welcome. Okay, so today we have several guests joining us. Of course, we have Vera, who's joining us, and Craig Martelle and Stephen Sears. So welcome, everybody. You guys want to take just a couple minutes and introduce yourself for the people who don't know who you are?
Which I'm sure are few.
Yeah.
Very few.
Steve first.
Okay, Steve.
Oh, right. Center foremost. My name is Stephen L. Sears. I am a writer, mostly in television. I'm also a nascent author. I have worked since 1984 professionally in the entertainment industry in film and television. I have written and produced a lot of shows going all the way back to the A-Team, if you remember that. That was my second show. I was also on, wrote and produced Swamp Thing. I did co-created the latest incarnation of Sheena, Queen of the Jungle. I was the co-exec producer and one of the head writers on Xena, Warrior Princess. I have also worked on, thank you, and Walker, Texas Ranger, Hardcastle McCormick, Stingray, Jesse Hawks. I guess I'm fortunate that I'm at the point where I can forget some of my credits. So, but I've done mostly that. I've also started broaching out into the land of prose. Co-wrote a graphic novel with Kevin J. Anderson, which is in feature development right now. And I've been doing short story anthologies, writing books, and in between all of that, I breathe.
Awesome. Okay, Craig.
That is great. What great credits. I haven't been in this business too long, but I do have a few books published. I think I'm at 135 or something.
Just a few.
Like that.
It's a couple.
Some 8 million words published. I do have my forte seems to be in military sci-fi and space opera, the blending of the two, the characters. I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps and retired when I was 39, way too young to stop working. So then I went and got a law degree, worked as a lawyer until I had enough of that, and then retired, and I've been writing ever since. So that has worked out very, very well for me. I also now run the 20 Books of 50K group. We have almost 71,000 members. We run conferences every year. And I think the greatest testament to sharing knowledge, and not my knowledge, just creating the platform for people to share, is the lives we've been able to change, the people who have been able to retire their spouse because they've been realized a level of success. I think Vera went to the conference last year and saw the amount of engagement we're able to get. We had 190 sessions, for Pete's sake, that covered everything, the gamut of writing, publishing, and managing a business. So that's which, of course, as a Marine, I like mil sci-fi. As a Star Trek, the original series, watched it when each new episode came because I'm that old, and blending those and then being a lawyer. So the business part of being an author, the authoring part of being an author, and of course getting into Dungeons and Dragons because I lived in the Midwest in the 70s. So all of that together has brought me to this point, and Vera's kindness to ask me to talk to you guys, and I've said nothing about anything so far except blither and blather. So
This is
so
what
here we
we're
are.
here for. This is great. This is great. And I was going to say, Stephen, all the shows that you mentioned are some of my favorites ever. I mean, seriously.
Well, thank you.
Did you say the A-Team?
That was my second show. The first one was called
Yes,
Riptide,
yes.
which I think Riptide is over here somewhere. Those are the guys over there, if you can see that on the screen.
Yes, that's just,
So.
Great stuff. So I'm so happy that we have these, the range of writing across the industry, because here you got the screenwriting side, then you have the novelist side. So this is perfect. This is what we want to be talking about. We got everything here.
And we get to arm wrestle later on. That'll be great.
There you go.
Did anybody schedule the mud wrestling for tonight? Okay, sorry.
I work in Hollywood, so I'm sorry, mud is my thing. So
Yes.
I've got the edge.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so Liz, did you have a question you wanted to start out with? Did you have anything?
Well, I can read one here. How does it make you feel when one of your books makes it to the big screen? So that would be for Craig, I presume.
Oh, I have no books. I had one series that was almost optioned, and I'm a realist. I understand. I have lawyer friends who actually work in Los Angeles, and they're like, even if you get it optioned, there's still probably a 1 in 1,000 chance before for it to actually become a show and see the small screen, or heaven forbid the big screen. You got to have the showrunner. You got to have the buy-in from people with the money and the talent to bring this something to fruition. So we wrote one series, a Dark Landing series, which is because we're all still mad that Firefly never had a second season. And Dark Landing was our answer to that. That if you missed Firefly, you should jump into this story. It's each one is 25 to 30,000 words. It was a 12-book series for season 1, and we wrote it very specifically to target getting optioned and maybe getting onto the small screen, whether Netflix, Amazon Prime, any producer of a show. And that was the one we did indeed get a bite on, but it wasn't enough to change our trajectory of our careers, which means writing books, selling novels. I mean, and I do very, very well at that. I don't need to see my stuff on the small screen. Yes, it would be a great ego bump, but I'm okay doing what I do, which is writing novels and selling them to readers who want to escape from the trials and tribulations of today's reality.
What about you, Steve? Do you would know people whose books have become, obviously, you know, are they happy? Are they happy to have their work on the screen?
Well, I mean, I'm in all phases of that. I currently, I'm developing a project I develop projects also off of existing IPs, working directly with the authors. I'm working with Diana Zimmerman, a woman who, she wrote a series called Candide, 3-book series. I'm working off of that right now. She and I are working together to develop a package. It's gotten a lot of interest. And absolutely, by the way, what Craig said is absolutely true. In this business, the vast majority of film and television is what doesn't happen. It's complete vaporware.
Yeah.
Just the top 10% is what people see, and they assume that's the 100%. The vast majority of this business is development, it's option deals, it's networking, it's all of that. And the creator, the writer, the author, still has to do 100% of the work that in other fields, in more trade fields, would be a career. But we have to do that sometimes, most of the time, on our own for free. We're not being paid for this. So I've got that particular project at various stages. I'm at the point that we've developed a complete pitch package, pitch deck, written the 2 scripts for the introduction to it, all the character breakdowns, the treatment, all the overalls. And now that goes out to people, whatever people means, but it's got to get out there. I did co-write the graphic novel with Kevin J. Anderson. And that one is in feature. Yeah, and Kevin's great. And that's we've been friends.
I'm working with him. Just to interrupt quickly, I'm working with him right now. We have a story bundle that's out there. He's curating. So we're like promoting it like literally now. It's
story bundles are great. I wrote a book just about working in the industry, and Kevin Wordfire published it because Kevin and I were going to try to work on something. And he was coming out here to California, and I kept notes on all the classes I'd lectured on. So I sent him this stack of notes. And when he showed up, he said, this is a book. And I said, not enough words in there for a book. And he said, do a word count. And I said, that's like not even 80,000 words. And I know, that's how stupid I am. And so he walked over to my cabinet, pulled out a book, and he said, probably this is 40,000. I went, oh, okay, well, let's do something. So yeah, my first outing with that book was a story bundle, and that unfortunately spoiled me because those story bundles can do very, very well. However, back to the development. So the graphic novel is something that Kevin and I went through. Oh, that's it back there, by the way. Of course, I'm a writer. I have to show everything.
Oh,
That
yeah.
orange one, that went through 3 publishers, and I was getting it out to the studios before we even published it. Got a lot of interest, a lot of response, a lot of good things. Then finally we got a call from Francis Lawrence, who directed I Am Legend, Red Sparrow, 3 of the Hunger Games movies, all of my favorite movies. And he wanted to do an option on this, a shopping agreement, to take it around to the studios. And I was like, great. And, you know, we chatted, and he's such an incredibly writer-friendly guy. He said he always likes working with the original source authors, which is very unusual in this business. So we made an agreement with him. COVID hit, it was delayed. Then when we came out of that, he had a deal with New Republic Entertainment. They did Rocket Man in 1917. And so we signed a deal there. Now, in all of this, to give you an example of how Hollywood works, I had been pushing this. I'd been out there trying to get it done. So I was talking to his partner, and I'm feeling pretty cocky about this. I did it. So I said to him, I said, now, you know, how did you get this? I know I got it over to a couple of guys who had golden parachutes at Paramount. Certainly got it over to my contacts at Universal. You know, how did you come by this? And he looks at me, he says, I think it was Barnes and Nobles. Literally, they just bought it in a Barnes and Nobles. That's where it came from.
Wow.
Which was on one part of my ego, incredibly damaging. But on the other side, that is absolutely the best way for this to happen, because they were not pushed into it, they were attracted to it.
Exactly. That's,
So,
you know, that's like the dream. I think most people have like, oh, instead of begging people to look at my book, somebody finds your book or finds your you know, product, and they're from there on, they're the ones asking you.
yeah. Now I will say, so going back to the source of the question, because I've already talked too long. I find it amusing going back to Kevin Anderson, because Kevin and I have been friends since the late 90s. His perspective of Hollywood is very interesting because he's a pure author. So why can't they get this done? Why is it taking so long? Why in the world? What do you mean this is a contract that we won't see anything for another 6 months or 18 months? Why can't they pay us up front? And I'm kind of like, welcome to my world, Kev. You know, I mean, when I stretched out and started writing anthology stories, really, I called him one time and I said, wait a minute, why aren't they going to pay me up front? Why am I having to submit this? Why do they have to approve this? So, you know, each one has its own demons. But for the most part, the authors I know of who have finally gotten their works to fruition, yeah, they're absolutely thrilled to see their names up in lights. But the caution here is that what you originally write as a pure author, this now is in a collaborative process where it's not going to be exactly what you think it's going to be. So you either settle for that or you don't show up at the premiere, one or the other.
That's right. I'm thinking of Hugh Howey. You guys know Hugh Howey, the Silo author of Wool, who's newest, I think it's on Apple. Is it on Apple? That's out.
Apple streaming.
Silo is like the hot new thing that's out. So, you know, what is Hugh feeling? I mean, he's thrilled, I guess, but you know, how true is it? I haven't seen it yet. So,
yeah.
You know, what a feeling it must be.
The writer's frustration. As a side note, there was a series a long time ago called Hollywood Detective. Didn't last for very long. I was a part of that. And the premise of that was set in the 1930s about a detective who desperately wanted to be a screenwriter. However, since he couldn't be, nobody would hire him as a screenwriter, he decided that to get sources for his ideas, and by the way, he always had a typewriter with one page that said fade in. He never was able to add to that. But his day job is he decided to work for famous authors and help them come up with stories. So we literally had, like, Ben Hecht was in there, you know, Francis Scott Fitzgerald. We played those characters in there. But to give you an example of how things transition, he goes off on this case, and it's an embezzlement case with the studios, and he gets all this stuff done. There's action adventure, of course. car chase. And when he finally presents it to Hemingway sits there and thinks, and he's got this smile on his face, and this guy can tell he's already come up with a story. And he says, "So what are you going to do with the story?" And Hemingway goes, "I'm going to put a fish in it." So.
That's great.
There you go. Hey, Steve, I think you need to join us in Vegas, and I'll make an invite, because I have your email now. I'll make an invite to you. It's November 6th to 10th.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, this year,
Las Vegas.
this is the 20 books this year, right? The November,
Yeah.
Cool.
And Kevin J. Anderson will be there with his with Rebecca and
well.
Marie from Wordfire.
Busy
You're busy then.
But
It's
we
at
ever eaten with
Bally's,
them?
right?
No,
Is it
they're-
again at Bally's?
Well, it's Horseshoe now. They renamed it. It's the
Horseshoe,
exact same
right?
hotel.
That's
Yeah. But it's right across from Bellagio's. I mean, you can't beat the location.
Yeah.
It's right on the strip, and 5-minute walk to a number of 5-star restaurants. So there's always the threat of gorging while in Vegas.
That's a truism. Thank you very much. Yeah, that'd be fun. Wow, cool.
Because a lot of people have those questions regarding screenwriting. Maggie Marr is coming from Hollywood. She runs a legal agency that handles a lot of issues. And I mean, we usually have screenwriters. John Truby comes every year.
Good.
And we also had District 9, the lady who wrote that, the screenwriter for that one. She has come in the past to talk about screenwriting, and especially the truisms that you talked about, which is it's not going to be exactly like your book. No movie ever is. No mini series, no short stories, no episodes. But close. How can you maintain the flavor of it? And that's I think J.K. Rowling did an incredible job in negotiating her contract, where she was actually able to retain directive control or creative control, and so much so that the story is mostly what she wrote.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't E.L. James do the same with the 50 Shades of Grey? I think she also had at least I hear that. Well, she was kind of in the industry already. I think wasn't she a screenwriter before, or something like that? Or
no,
she fan fiction.
She published on like Royal Road and built a readership there for free on 50 Shades.
Right, like a fanfic type of thing.
And one of the things I heard that she laments is that she did not have creative control over the movies. That they went a different direction.
It's a hard one to get as an original author. You really have to be you have to basically be a thirst trap. You have to be somebody that they have to work with. They absolutely have to work with you before you can call the shots.
Yeah.
You know, and also it's different audience appeals. The graphic novel, for example, ours is a futuristic concentration camp and an alien war of genocide. So there are aliens in it. There's a lot of them. And when you're doing a graphic novel, Mike Ratera did our artwork. And of course, we were appealing to the graphic novel fan community, which is much more visual, much more get the monsters really monstrous type of thing. What we're working out as our final story for the film actually goes to the core of what Kevin and I were trying to do in the first place, which was a psychological drama about humans caught in a concentration camp where you can't even appeal to the humanity of your captors because they aren't. And our log line for the entire thing is, what is human? That was the focus. That's what was our little treasure and delight when writing it. And then we added everything else on because that was the marketing appeal. With this film and the way that Francis likes to take things, he likes to concentrate on the psychological. So less of the aliens are still in there, obviously, but less of that and more conscious. So when I was reading the treatment that he sent, I was like, this is great. This is exactly what we went into the core. Is it going to be the same? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But for us, it's like in a great direction.
Cool.
This is just fascinating to hear, because you guys may or may not know, Steve and Craig, the option that I've had for my series, for this particular series, we've been re-upped several times now, and it's taking forever. And you know what? The 2020 situation really, it screwed us over so badly. I'm sure, Hollywood stopped I mean, literally everything was just like, we know that everything stopped too, not just Hollywood, but that just doesn't help at all. And, it just cranks forever. And so they re-upped it, like, I think 3 times now, we re-upped the option, but, because the producer is very interested, but I keep telling people, this is something that takes a long time. Don't who knows, whatever, it just takes a long, long time. And
Yeah.
people keep saying, well, what's the progress? I don't know. Nobody knows.
And that's the hard thing, especially when you do a convention or a panel, because people say, what are you working on? And you can say, I have my books in development. And people go, great. Then the very next convention, hey, what happened with that? And it's like, ellipse. ...
In development.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that can go on for years. I have, I don't know if we'll get into this topic or not, but an extremely important topic for all authors when they're talking about developer screenplay are your copyright and ownership issues. And I dealt with that on all sides. I currently am going through a rights issue with books that I didn't write, but I own the rights to them. So
Craig has the same situation.
I would imagine he's probably had it several times.
Yeah, I think you own the rights to some estates, right? I think, Craig. Yeah.
So dealing with that is, then you have all the rights issue, plus your copyright time limits, your termination letters to deal with. And at the same time, you're dealing with the studio that might want to take 2 years on options. And you're saying, the more you take on this, the more you're getting close to slamming up against certain conventions of copyright law. So it's complicated.
I guess that's a whole new level of things you have to keep track of that, you wouldn't, most people who set out to do writing don't even think about that aspect of like, how long is the copyright good for, and keeping track of all of that.
I'll tell you Craig, when you were going through your background, of all your impressive things, the thing that impressed me the most is that you have legal acumen. Most authors don't.
I tell you what, that helps immensely. And it's almost innate to ask certain questions when other people don't even consider them, because licensing is different than copyright, because somebody can own the copyright and have no ability to publish, promote, do anything because they've licensed that away.
Yeah.
And what about the difference between paperbacks and ebooks? And now the contracts have gotten so all inclusive that they include and in vehicles not yet contemplated. So if there's some virtual AI they created, hey, they still have those derivative rights within the contract, as opposed to 80s and 90s pulp fiction, which did not contemplate the ebook. So a lot of authors were able to, they keep their trade paperbacks through their publisher, but now they own the rights to publish ebooks. I think Kevin J. Anderson has benefited from that in a few cases. But it's a completely different world. And yes, 3 years of law school did not go to waste, because first I made a lot of money as a lawyer, and then second, it set me up for this as an author.
Every author should concentrate on the business side. I am not having legal training, and believe me, my background reflects it. My college, everything reflects that. However, I make it a policy to read every contract, everyone. I read it word for word. I circle the parts that I don't understand, and I talk to my attorneys. I said, explain this as if I'm a child, because I need to know about this. And I have literally, that's a good word for this particular panel. I was going through a contract with a studio, and I'm not going to give you the whole details because it is complicated, but it was kind of a particular fee that I would pay for future productions of something, not residuals, but literally my fee for producing. And it came down to one word, which was the difference between in and for. You will be paid this for something produced in this season, or paid this for something produced for this season, because it changed from one season to the other. And I was contending that we were shooting 2 episodes in this season that were going to be shown for the next season. So therefore I got a higher rate. And I contended at that. And my agent representation, he says, the studio came back and said, no, you're shooting it in this season, therefore you have the old rate. And my agent agreed with that. And I said, well, I'm going to call legal VP. Fortunately, I dealt with them before, so I knew who to call. And I called the person, and they explained it to me, and then I said, okay, I want to take you to your own contract. This page, this line, it's this word. The difference between in and for.
Mhm.
Literally, there was a pause, and he went, damn, we were hoping you wouldn't catch that.
Oh dear.
That's a thing I want
That's
to mention.
right.
That writers and lawyers seem to have a really good, like a lot of. I have an IP lawyer also in intellectual property, and he says that of all his clients, like me and whoever are writers, seem to be like the ones who really read the contract, and like we pay attention to the words,
Yeah.
like you mentioned. So I think that's a great example. I love that.
Yeah. And the difference, by the way, was a minimum of $160,000
Wow.
for that one word.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I was kind of like, okay, thank you. And of
That
course,
was
then it
fun.
went off, and I'm ready to do trial law, which of course.
I was gonna say, reading all of your contract is handy in other areas too. Like I've had, I worked as a contract computer programmer for a while, and I would sit there and read every single word on my contracts, and I would scratch through things that I didn't agree to, and they're like, you can't do that. I'm like, yes, I can. It's my contract. If I don't want to sign it, I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
And there were things hidden in there that I know good and well they were hoping nobody would read. Things like anything you create during this contract belongs to us, meaning the contracting company I was working for. It's like, no, it belongs to the client because we're doing it for the client. It doesn't, oh yeah, no, scratching that out, and they were not happy, but I'm like,
Yeah.
so it doesn't matter what your profession is. Somebody wants you to give you a contract, and read the thing.
Always treat it as if you are it. Don't treat it like it's your enemy, but keep this in mind. Corporations, studios do not spend millions of dollars on attorneys to be fair.
Yes, exactly.
They have their own interests. And I'll tell you the most important thing that an attorney told me early in my career. I'm going to defer to Craig and see what your reaction is on this one, because you probably have told this. And of course, this was the attorney working for me. And he said, never be afraid to circle things in the contract, no matter how stupid or how ignorant you think it's going to make you sound. Never be afraid to bring that up with as much force and conviction of anything you're defending in your regular stories. The point being is that you bring it up and you say, and don't act like, I hate to ask this question. I know it makes me sound stupid because that's kind of like a weak thing. You bring it up and say, no, this bothers me. So we need to talk about it, but never be afraid to do that. Too many people in the creative arts, they're afraid they're immediately going to burn out their deal just by questioning something. And that is not true. Every contract is questionable.
Right. Which is a good thing to keep in mind.
Questioning elements within a contract, and I've done that. I try to keep. I am allergic to lawyerese and legalese because it's unclear. It is clear to about two people and nobody else, and usually not the recipient. And of course, if any contract goes to court, the initial it's not innocent until proven guilty. Not in contract, not in civil court. The contract, it is assumed to be skewed toward the drafter, which would be the studios. And if it's skewed, well, then their initial support is behind the person questioning the contract. And what a lot of companies call boilerplate contract, that's also known as a contract of adhesion, and it is not enforceable because you have no ability to negotiate the contract. And this is the contracts. Negotiating is what makes a contract sound. You give something to get something, as simple as that. But I've had people question things in my contracts. Say, hey, no problem. Let me reword that to mean the exact same thing I intended it to mean, but in words that you can accept. And then the conversation all becomes part of the contract background, that if it did indeed go to court and I don't want to go to court, first, it benefits me because it's like a field trip. It doesn't benefit anybody else who actually has to pay a lawyer to go to court for them. So I wouldn't recommend it. I get it fixed up front, right, and then move forward. But get the language that you can accept, that you think is clear, but also What you think is clear may not be in a court of law. So that's why I always get your lawyer to review something, especially if you're talking something like 150 grand, and your lawyer almost threw you under the bus for that because they assumed. And when you assume, you make an ass of you and umption.
I like
Well
that.
stated.
That's good. Well, one of the questions I always like asking people is, what is the favorite thing that you've worked on, or had mostly that. What's your favorite thing that you've worked on? Anybody want to start?
I will say I'm not wired for favorites. I favorites list are horrible things for me, because it's kind of like, give me 5 minutes. I can tell you what's on the screen right now. That's my favorite, because every time I'm working on something, it's my favorite. And it's kind of like, which one is your favorite child? It's probably the one that's not annoying you at the moment.
Yeah.
So I can say, for different reasons, there are projects that I've worked on that I'm very, very proud of, in television and film. Very proud of the work that I did on Xena. The repercussions of that are still being felt today. Everything that I've done, no matter what the venue was, what the show was, I have put 150% into it. That's my joy. So all of them are my joys. And at the same time, I am loath to go back and either watch my episodes or read my scripts, because, as you know, editing never ends. It's always going on. They once they pay you, we say, okay, you stop editing, stop fixing the moment they pay you, because it's out of your hands. But that's not quite true emotionally.
Yeah.
I will say that in the that book here, this one in the front, that one, I wrote a short story for the Alien versus Predators anthology. It was the first anthology that Disney and Fox and Titan had put out on Alien versus Predator. And mine was a historical perspective. It was set back in the 1700s, and I had to reference colonialism, slavery, all sorts of things, which were writing outside of my skin. And it was designed to be a diversity book. All the stories were to be focusing on diversity. So we went through the sensitivity readers, which, by the way, I actually agree with. I actually love working with sensitivity readers, especially for Disney. And as we went through all of my historical references, I'm a bit of a history geek. I am. I love reading history. I do focus also on military history. And as we went through this, they were asking me questions about the environment. They were asking me questions about the colonialism, about the slavery, about the slave trade, about this issue and these particular locations. And I kept responding to them by linking to actual histories, not just in general actual histories of the place I was talking about, et cetera.
Right.
And at one point, I was happy to say I sent them an email. It was all very nice exchanges. And I said, what I find amusing is that everything in my story is 100% true, except your aliens and predators. The only thing fictional. And I was very proud that when I was done with this, I not only got a nice note from Titan, I got a nice note from the head sensitivity reader for being so detailed, because that saved them a lot of work. And the person who thanked me, an African-American woman, she told me, she said, I was totally unaware of this aspect of this history. And these people come from the region from my family. She goes, this is my heritage. And I never knew it was there.
Wow.
So I'm kind of proud about that one, because it involved everything that I liked: research, history, fantasy, the science fiction, the story, the characters, etc. And then it had a nice little positive result with everybody involved.
Oh yeah. That's it.
Still with aliens and predators. So
Still with that, yeah. But favorites, I'm with Steve. I like all my books. I like the one I'm working on most, and of course, the best one is the one that's next in the schedule to write, because that one will be the best, undoubtedly. I think one of the ones that I feel is my best is the second or the third book I ever wrote, which is People Raged and the Sky is on Fire, which is a pseudo autobiography of an intelligence analyst in DC racing against a terrorist. Having worked with the military, having worked with the Department of Homeland Security, I cannot tell you how much I loathe bureaucrats and bureaucracy. So I bring that to the fore in this book in a fairly subtle way, and hopefully it makes an impression. Now, this is one of my worst selling books because I write science fiction. I have 5, 6 thrillers published, and those are doing fine. Well, those mostly are doing fine. The other series, my Hitman with a Conscience series, is doing great. But the Rick Bannock, the People Raged book, no, that is one of my worst sellers, and I think it's my best book. I went back through it to reread it to get ready and write a book 2, and book 2 sales are just as are even more abysmal than book 1. So here's a hint: if you're writing a series, if book 1 doesn't sell, don't expect book 2 to sell. So and as I went through book 1, I'm like, man, this is really good. This is better than I should have been at that point in my career. I tweaked up some language that wasn't clear, that wasn't smooth, because when you have 7 years in between when you write a book and you rewrite it, you see a lot of things, and especially 7 years and 7 million words in between, you just write better. I mean, practice makes better. It's just, I mean, ask anybody who plays golf. And the result was, I think, an even better book that still doesn't sell. So I don't think we're going to do any more Rick Bannock.
You know, there's just something about it. You know,
Uh-oh.
Craig, you're off. You're muted,
audio.
Craig. Craig, something happened to you.
Hang on. I don't think he can unmute himself. 1 second there.
Yeah.
Okay. Now try and unmute yourself.
There
I
we
don't know
go.
how I got muted.
There you
I
go.
don't know. I don't know what I did.
You're back. Dulcet tones.
I was just gonna say that both of you are so right in terms of whatever the book we're working on right now, that's your favorite, because we're inhabiting, that's what's in our brain right now, because and it takes over your world, so that's your favorite. And I think only it's like with the time having passed, can you look back on your work and say, okay, well, you know what, these are all good, but that one really kind of stays with me. So it's hard to say. I think we need more time just to, even through our lifetime, we need more time to look back and say, you know what, that really was my favorite after all. I think I may have something like that. I have in fact, my first published novel, Dreams of the Compass Rose, I think it's kind of like, it's the complexity of the structure to me, that kind of work. It's like the 1001 Nights, that type of, story within story. So I'm really proud, and I think that's like a well done structure, but just like Craig, it's not selling very well. That's not the one that's selling well.
Yeah. So, this links right into the maddening question of writing and creativity. And that goes to this: how do you know you're a good writer? How do you know? Is it a paycheck? I'll show you something. This is my business card. It's an old one, so ignore the fact that I've got a different color beard. But if you can read it, I want you to read what's on my business card.
Alleged writer.
Alleged. Oh, that's
what it says. Now, the reason for that is because I never trained to be a writer, and certainly not a screenwriter. I fell into it. I realized in retrospect that I was always a storyteller. I just had to find the right platform. So I went through the imposter phenomena to a heavy extent for the first 2 years of my career while I'm working on shows. I still have the imposter phenomena going on. So when people ask me, are you a good writer? I just go, I don't know. I can tell you 2 things. I absolutely love doing it. I can't live without doing it. And secondly, they pay me. So allegedly, I'm a writer.
Yeah, they would pay somebody else who was better if.
Yeah,
exactly. I think the imposter thing is just there to stay. I don't think any one of us completely gets rid of that, because it's just, I think it's a part of being a writer, because as a creative, you're like you're pulling stuff out of nothing and you're putting it out there.
Yeah.
And then, is it good? I don't know. So you have to have the validation of the external, something out there.
Right.
Either the money or the fans or the whatever, the time that passes to kind of let everything judge. And, it's hard to say that. And I think imposter is just there with me every day too.
The one thing you can validate is your joy of writing.
Yeah.
That you can validate.
Yes, yeah, you can. Can I
Yeah,
ask?
that's always that next book. I mean, try to learn and try to do better. And I've got a new deal coming up that I hope we'll be able to announce it sometime soon-ish, probably 6 months down the road. But that one I think will be the epitome of my career, and I think,
Oh, good.
and that's what I'm working toward. And actually, last month I just crossed over 1 million sales. So I'm thinking, can 1 million people be wrong? There's 100. I have like 150 1-star reviews on my
Wow.
on my Amazon books. I mean, I've got like 50,000-60,000 reviews now, and but I've got 150 1-stars. So yeah, there's a lot of people who think, no, I'm not a writer.
Yeah.
1-star reviews are a good thing because we all know that people are saying, oh no, in fact, it just means that's how many more people you have out
That's
there.
right.
It's normal. It's good. So it's like the more 1-stars, good.
Well, I thank them for their money.
Yes.
So,
Exactly.
I'd like to ask Steve something.
Uh-oh.
I remember watching Xena. I live in Greece, by the way.
Oh.
So Greek mythology is something that we know we live with it. My kids were going to school and we're going, that's not right. That's not how the story goes. Bloody Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wrecking everything. Do you? And yet you said that you love history and the facts of history and everything. So artistic license and being able to change a story and taking the premise from an ancient myth and then doing whatever you like with it is okay.
Is it okay? I will go back to what Craig just said. We have lots of validation that it was okay.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Hold on a
we
second.
watched it every week, even though we complained all the time.
Yeah, it's like, hold on, I'll find out if it's okay. It was my accountant. My accountant says it was great. So, but now that's an interesting thing because one of the joys of working on that show is that we were able to mine from history, but we never pretended we were a documentary. Obviously not.
No.
I've always looked at Xena, and I've explained it this way. I say we were kind of an alternate history. Because if you think about it, we did one kind of a allegorical story that was basically Abraham, trying to, do I kill my son or not? Then 2 weeks later, she's in Troy. So, we kind of went, we used to have a rule there, which was anything BC is open, we can take that. And then, one day we kind of crossed that Rubicon, so to speak, and we were not BC anymore. So we totally fantasy. So we were mining bits and pieces. And I can tell you there were a couple of episodes which I was proud of personally, because if you made two small assumptions, one of them I wrote about Rome and the events that I portrayed in the Rome in this particular episode, if you eliminated a 5-year gap that was in the actual events and assumed that the men who wrote the stories deliberately ignored the woman, everything in that story was also absolutely true. It was absolutely believable. You could see that happening. But you brought up an interesting thing, which another one of those things you kind of get proud about. We, of course, got a lot of mail from people who said that was not the history. And we're like, we know it's not. Myself, RJ Stewart, who was also a co-exec or exec producer on it, and Rob Tappert, we were all kind of history buffs. So that's why we were able to mine certain things. But I got this letter from this guy who told me that his daughter would watch Xena so that she could make fun of it, because they started watching it and there was a story that she just thought was kind of weird. And he said, well, there's parts of that are true. So she goes to the encyclopedia and pulls it out. She's reading through it. And then she starts criticizing the show because the details were wrong. Then every time they would sit there and they would watch an episode, she'd do the same thing. She'd run off and she'd get her history book and she would read and she would criticize it. And it was kind of fun. But what he wrote me the letter about is that one day he finally realized she was reading. She was going to a history book and reading. And he goes, I have to thank you for that, even though it's like because she was making fun of you. And I'm like, dude, that's awesome. That's cool. I love that. So yeah, we played fast and well, we didn't play fast and loose. We were all over the place with our particular history. Yeah. And what's interesting is that when I had to appear at my school, after Xena became popular, I appeared at my school to do a lecture about working in the industry. And I don't know, somewhere I have this up in my closet. Somebody had sent me a front page of some newspaper in Greece, and Xena was right on the cover. And of course,
Yeah.
I could not read it. There was a friend of mine I had dated a long time ago who was Greek, so I sent it to her to try to translate some of it, and she just couldn't stop laughing. But it was hysterical that there it was. You know, I'm like, wow, we finally made it. We hit the.
It was very popular here. It was extremely popular here in Greece. And Hercules
Cool.
before Xena, was it a similar production? You weren't on that one, but the
Right.
Hercules series, and then they sort of melded together on occasion. And
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Xena was a spinoff from Hercules, so I came
Yeah.
on to Xena. I didn't work on Hercules, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think that it was a better spin-off.
no
Xena
comment at this time. I will always thank Hercules for being our big brother. We would not have been on the air if it hadn't been for Hercules.
Yeah.
So
Oops, excuse me. Something's there.
that is funny. You know, the interesting thing is that well, Craig, you're a historian too, right, Craig?
A military history specifically, yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever find that when you are writing, you're tempted to go into like alternate history on your, even in small details, to try to craft an actual historical event towards your story? You ever have to deal with that?
Oh, of course, throw it in there. I've done some things where I've tweaked Civil War battles on how they shaped and into, because I spent a lot of time as a Marine Corps officer. We were taught Civil War, and we were bussed up to Gettysburg. We're taken over to Antietam. I mean, we went to a lot of Civil War battlefields to talk through not just the tactics, which no longer applied, but the leadership specifically. How do you get a battalion of men to march into fire? How do you keep them marching? And
we have to have
leadership-
lunch sometime and talk about that.
and that's I mean, a significant element of getting people to do something that they kind of know they're going to die, and it starts with when you first meet them. And that was the 20th Maine, and what Killer Angels really was a fantastic book from a military history perspective.
But as a side note, I love Killer Angels. And his son, you know, Jeff, went off and started doing his father's stories as well, doing adaptations. One fairly good movie, one horrible movie. But the funny thing is I started reading Jeff's books because I loved his father's book.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I'm a military brat. I never did serve. I'm a military brat, but most of my young life I was spent military bases. My dad doing his overseas service and all that. So I it shouldn't even be said, but I'm going to say it. I appreciate and understand the environment that I did not live, so which you have had the benefit of. But I am not somebody who is a starstruck person. If you live on a military base long enough, you understand command structure, and you cannot be starstruck by anybody in that particular environment. So I've never really been starstruck. There's only one person I've ever chased down for a photo, and that was Richard Sherman of the Sherman Brothers, who wrote all the Disney songs and Mary Poppins and all that kind of stuff. I had to have my picture with him. And I decided one day I was going to write a fan letter to Jeff Shara, just because I was really enjoying his books. And as you know, Jeff's the first one to tell you this is a dramatization. Do not take it as verbatim history. But I was really enjoying them. So I just wrote this, and I did it kind of comically. I said, "Hi there, I'm a writer." And then parentheticals, I said, "No, I actually am. I get paid for this." And, you know, just kind of made it like that. And I said, "I just want you to know I don't write these things, but I really enjoy your books. I don't write fan letters, but you deserve it." And there. And I just sent it off, emailed it to his website, which I assumed somebody was going to read it and toss it. So like the next day, I got an email back from Jeff Shara, and it started off by saying, "I know exactly who you are. You write my favorite show."
Oh, that is great.
So we become kind of friends over the years with that. So
That's cool.
Cool.
Here's a little puppy dog just waved at us over there. I saw that.
Yes, I see
This,
little.
Stephen, this is Asen,
Ah,
and he was
very nice.
named after one of the title characters in the Atlantis Grill series.
He's named after the main hero.
very
And
cool.
he's got
That's
you know,
cool.
brown around his eyes like eyeliner,
Very cute. I'm such a dog person.
and he is he's definitely a regal dog. He thinks he's, you know, the king.
And
Well-
I think we got Stanley there. I keep saying behind Craig, there's a
Yeah, I
dog
noticed
right
that.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I see him turning around a few times.
When
Yeah,
I first
Stanley's
saw the
back there.
movement back there in the covers, I thought, is this going to be
There
one of
he
those
is,
like
there he is,
embarrassing
moving his
comedy
little-
things?
oh.
But no,
Yeah.
it turned out, oh, that's a dog. Okay,
A
good.
naked dog. Yes.
Yeah,
And my cat keeps joining every once in a while too, because India's like, people are talking. Let me see who's talking.
I have to put a baby, like a little door to this door here, because otherwise the cats in the previous panel, they literally ran across multiple times. So this, to curb that, I have a door that's not it's like one of those baby gates.
I've got
Well,
one,
they,
and
Asen is sort of our canine mascot.
Oh,
We have a
cool.
lot of feline mascots, but Asen's is our only canine.
We have
Yeah, I'll
one
have-
22-year-old cat,
Oh, wow.
Nice.
That's
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
and that gate doesn't work. The cat will still crawl over the gate. He's very gangly because he's so old, but and I'm, when I got married, the cat came with the deal, and I've come to love the cat. I will tell you, I'm not a cat person, but I've come to love this cat. So
I was going to say it must have been the wife's cat. Yeah.
yeah.
That's when I as soon as we're done, I have to take him out. His first walk this morning, we walked out the garage door, and there was a moose, a cow, and a calf standing right there.
Oh,
So I
wow.
had to drag him back inside because he wanted to run. He wanted to run with the cow, and that's not good. Not when a calf is around. So
I just
we
found
went-
like
He's in
two
Alaska.
different.
Yeah, you're in Alaska. Where are you, Steve? Steve, where-
Oh, I'm so not Alaska. I'm down in Los Angeles. So
yeah, you're.
yeah, I walk out, and I certainly I do not miss seeing a moose. Believe me, I traveled a lot, and I have had, when you're driving down a highway and a moose is running past you, that's kind of a scary thing. But yeah, we have we've got a mountain lion that's somewhere regional here. There's a bear way over in the Burbank side, but mostly we just have things like, deer, bobcats. I think I've actually got 3 deer out my window just staring at me. So we have all of that. But no, we're not Alaska. No.
One of my nephew's friends lives in Utah,
Hmm.
and he has shown various pictures. He has an entire herd of deer of at least 10 to 20 that he's got some that actually lay on his patio.
We have that here. Yeah. And we've got our herd is 17. And I'll just be like washing the dishes, look out the front window. They just walk up the street.
Oh, wow.
They're like, what are you going to do? We're protected dudes.
Yeah.
Well, there's a thing about writers and animals. You always have to either
Yeah,
writers with cats, writers with dogs, writers with both cats and dogs. So
Yes, there are
or
familiars.
wildlife. You gotta have
Familiars.
that.
Yep.
Yep. I'm guessing you don't miss the alligators from Florida, though, huh?
When I was living there, my dad retired to Florida. We got, you get used to what's around you. And
Yeah.
there was one time that we lived like 4 blocks away from one of the alligator farms, the big tourist attractions. And back when it was illegal to hunt alligators, poachers, of course, would try to break in and grab some gators. And apparently the sheriffs were waiting for them. There was a big, chase or something like that. And one of the walls dropped down. And my dad was getting up to go to work. At that time, he was the Army liaison to the National Guard unit. And so he's dressed up in his greens and ready to go in and walks out the door and comes back in. He goes, "You got to come out and take a look at this." And so there was a 6.5-foot gator sunning itself in her driveway. And you look down the street and there were like several just lying in the gutters, and the alligator farm truck was going by and noosing them and catching them. My dad goes out with a push broom and kind of like pushes this one, and it snarls and walks over and sits down. Dragons in our mists. But yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all of that goes into a story somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Usually on the news somewhere, at least with the alligators in Florida. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have one of the questions from the little side chat here. Somebody wanted to know you guys' opinions on the fact that there's a lot of amazing authors out there. So why is it that Hollywood keeps recycling things they've already done before?
It's a very simple answer.
Money.
You keep
Because
going.
Oh yeah.
I will tell you, actually, it's a psychological answer to it. The reason for it is it's called branding. It's branding. We have already trained you to like one thing, so why not do it again and again and again, and we'll do it again and again. And sometimes the branding is good. Most of the time, it's always going to be a disappointment to the people who were originalists, who watched the originals. There's been a few movies that the branding was the title. Then when you saw the movie, it was like, this is nothing like what this was supposed to be. I mean, there was a movie, which whether you like the movie or not, they did a rebranding of the old TV series I Spy.
Mm-hmm.
And when they did that, it was, they did it with Owen Wilson and Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy. Yep.
Yeah. And you watched it and no, it wasn't I Spy, except the spy part was there, but it was completely different.
Mhm.
So, but the thing is that branding, there's so much money to be made, and there's so much money that gets invested that many times they will say, what is my instant return? And a lot of the times people will say, oh, that was my favorite movie. That was my favorite TV show. That was my favorite book. So I'm going to sample it, which means they're buying a ticket. It is the one star that you appreciate the fact that they bought a book. So at least they can get you in for that.
Yeah.
But that's really what it is. It's the safe bet is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, how many different Spider-Mans do we need? But as long as they keep earning out,
Yeah.
we're going to get more.
How many times does Ben have to die before they get that right? Same thing with Pa Kent. Give him a rest.
Exactly. And I was
Martha.
thinking same thing with Batman's parents, Bruce Wayne's
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
oh no,
same
not
thing.
again. Yeah.
But
Well,
that's the reason.
The only thing I'm really looking forward in the new, what is the Flash, is the return of
Of
the
course.
original guy saying, I am Batman.
Yeah.
I forget his
Michael
name. now, but
Keaton.
you know what
Michael
I'm talking
Keaton.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
Batman.
it's like,
Oh,
yeah, that's what I want.
Absolutely.
That's all I care about.
Yeah. But you
Yeah, I
see,
think-
that is the marketing of Hollywood. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Let's grab them in at least for the first one. Our numbers will be really high. And back before streaming, box office was it. And that opening weekend was
Mhm.
the main thing, the opening weekend. So if I can bait you in with something that makes you feel comfortable, even if you're disappointed walking out, I have those numbers.
Yeah, that's true.
Which, by the way, is not to say that new stuff is not being done. It's a harder sell, absolutely a harder sell. A lot of independent work is obviously new material. I encourage a lot of writers to try to engage the film community, to try to engage independent companies, authors I'm talking about, engaging them so that they can, first of all, learn about the business, but also that they can get their original work out there. New blood is exactly what we all need. We want to see new blood. It's harder to do, and it goes also right back to, you're going to be doing it at a beginning stage, so understand the business aspect of it. You have value. And the next time I hear somebody say, oh, I don't care if they pay me as long as I see my words on the screen. I'm like, the moment you realize how much money they're making off your words on the screen, you will
You want to get
understand.
paid.
You will care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have value. Your material has value.
Absolutely. Which I know nobody's mentioned it yet, but that's a big reason for the writer's strike. You know, the fact that people are not being paid fairly for what they're writing.
Mhm. Yeah, the industry, it's
And
always
going forward.
technology. Yeah, technology has always shifted the industry. And the writer in Hollywood is the least respected of the group. That is true. And yet we know nothing's going to happen until we're sitting there. Everybody interprets our work. We sit there with a blank screen. We've got to create all of this. So the Writers Guild is absolutely one of the strongest guilds because we know we are in it for the long term. It takes a while for us to be affected, or to our effect to be seen, because they have scripts in the pipeline. But I will give you this. This is why authors, thank goodness, authors are recognized directly for their work. But as just an overall example, the Academy Awards, okay? Here's how they publicly market them. You have Best Director, Best Actress, Best Actor, Best Screenplay.
Mhm.
3 of those are people.
Right.
Yeah.
One's a thing.
Yes.
There's no best
screenplay,
screenwriter.
Yeah.
That's the way it's regarded.
Isn't it the assumption that there's like a team working on this screenplay? It's as if it's usually, a core person involved, but.
Well, and the truth is, it's all collaborative. And that's the reason, even writers on Facebook pages, somebody will eventually say, what's your favorite movie quote? And then they quote it and they attribute either the actor or the character at best, and sometimes the director. And I have gone in and corrected them and say, no, that was written by this person. And then the response from writers is, well, who really knows? And my reaction is very simple. Look at the credits.
Yeah.
Because even though it's a collaboration, one line of dialogue is not an entire story. That line wouldn't exist. But also, as a producer, I have seen performances which were horrible in shows that I've done. And so I sit in an editing bay with an editor for 2 or 3 days, cutting that one scene so that I can make that one actor look like he had an award-winning performance. So who's really acting? So it's a complicated thing, but one thing you do have as being authors of your original IP is the fact that it is your IP. You are the center of this, and you have a direct ownership of it because your name on a shelf has value once you get that popularity going. That was my rant about screenwriting. So I
No,
just
this was
realized
great. This was great because
sorry.
it's so true about, people think of dialogue lines like, I do the same thing. I think, oh, so-and-so said it, Ghostbusters quote or whatever, but
yeah,
who actually wrote that,
That's like the very famous, everybody says, play it again, Sam. That wasn't in the movie.
Yeah,
That,
the memory thing.
it was actually, worded differently, but what we remember is because this person and that person, and it was repeated so often, we just attribute it to that movie.
I pity the fool was never in an A-Team episode. Sorry, folks.
Right. Okay, Liz, did you have another question from the list?
Oh, wow, let me have a look.
Well, we were going to talk a little bit about the industry. I think that is there anything new and exciting we want to discuss, like even just from the publishing side, what's happening out there, like Amazon doing stuff to, this is like the indie publishing side, for example, Amazon making changes to the way it's treating the Kindle Unlimited or, things that are having to do with the nitty gritty of publishing. So is there any kind of stuff we want to talk about that? Or
Well, you'll see Kindle Vella slowly disappear. I think they will stop paying bonuses because nobody was making any money on Kindle Vella. It was ill-conceived.
Really? That's
Yeah,
interesting.
it was.
Okay.
Some people did, but only because of bonuses, not because their stories were being read a whole lot, because there's not a lot of readers on Kindle Vella.
Right.
So somebody would sell, geez, I hate to say it, like $8 worth of an episode in a month, and they'd get a $250 bonus. I mean, it was ridiculous how the Amazon was rewarding readers. But I see that one disappearing, which that was their response to Royal Road or Wattpad or something like that, where it's episodic delivered. But it was also, this is Amazon with Kindle Unlimited, $9.99. Okay, that's going to go up to $11.99 here on June 20th. And you can read unlimited amounts, whatever you can physically read in a month for $12 or $10. Whereas Kindle Vella, one book, if they make it 75, 80 chapters, might cost you $20 some, which this is Amazon like negatively attacking their own business model, saying, well, these are different readers, and it didn't make any sense. And obviously it didn't, because the readers didn't go over there because they're not paying $20 for a book to read one chapter at a time. I think 1 to 2 chapters a week is what people were publishing, what they're required to publish. So this thing may take a year. And oh, by the way, it's going to cost you $20, $25 in tokens and coins to then unlock these episodes each week. So it was a failed business model. You'll see some changes for publishers coming soon from Amazon. I can't talk about them. I was involved in a beta program, and it's good. It's good to have some inside views of Amazon.
You have the reps, right? You go talk to the reps, and you have some of them.
I've done that a couple times, as well as been in a couple different betas. One didn't work as well, but this latest one was exceptional. And I've got another call next week with them to talk about it. But uh, uh, Amazon is listening to authors a hell of a lot more than they're given credit for. But also keep in mind, this is a battleship size juggernaut moving at 40 knots through the water. They're not going to turn. Little incremental changes. So, and they're not going to make a bunch of them. So whatever they choose is here's what we're going to change. This is what will change, and it may not change anything for the readers. But if it makes a publisher's life a little bit easier, like the increase in prices for paperbacks, just because paperback production has increased,
Right.
Ingram changed their prices 2 years ago.
They actually do it every year now. I think Ingram's been driving us insane because Ingram, the physical printing thing, print costs going up constantly. So we have to tweak our own prices because otherwise the margin goes down and down and it goes negative.
Amazon finally is changing their prices, and it's almost minuscule in a lot of the publications. In some of like children's books, it's high on the terms of like 20% increase in costs for a children's book. Anything bigger than 6x9 had a significant increase, and that's law of supply and demand. It means they don't want to supply it, so they want the smaller books like 5x8, nothing bigger than 6x9. And those prices are those increases were trivial.
Trade paperback, the 6x9 thing.
And trade even smaller. I think that's 4.75 inches by 7 inches, the mass market paperback size, which you cannot get as an indie. You have to 5x8 is the smallest.
What about the exclusivity thing? If Amazon's Kindle Unlimited got rid of their exclusivity, I would go back in because that's something that Steve, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but for indie writers, there's like a clause.
That's called a business advantage, and
they're
not going to change it. They're not going to change it at all, because
and that's why I'm not dealing with it. I'm out of that.
Enough people are, and they have millions of titles available in Kindle Unlimited that they can put out there, and from a business perspective, it's business genius, because they don't tell the authors what they're paying them until after the month is over. So you look at it and said, how can they survive? Because they're paying enough. And this is their constant challenge, is to pay the authors enough so they don't bail out and get out of it. I make so much damn money from Kindle Unlimited that I'm not going to leave. And it's going to take some kind of seismic shift for me to leave. I mean, they've paid me millions of dollars because of those page reads. So why would I turn my back on that? I have put some titles wide, and Kobo, Apple, Barnes & Noble absolutely do not make up the loss of what I get from Kindle Unlimited. So until
Kobo, sorry to interrupt. Kobo has a new program now. They're Kobo Plus or whatever. That's like a competition to the Kindle Unlimited.
And they're not exclusive. However, Kobo has 1% of the market. Amazon has 80%. So that 1% is Kobo before Kobo Plus, which is not exclusive. Yes, you can be in Kobo Plus and also be on Apple and Amazon and Google if you want. But the market share is so small, and they've not been able to articulate how they're going to increase their market share. And this is one thing, Amazon, they spent a lot of years not profitable in order to gain market share. Now that they have it, this is what monopolies are all about, and people are trying to knock the monopoly down. However, they give us access where Kobo does not. Now, if you're in the Netherlands, Kobo is much bigger than Amazon in the Netherlands. However, it's for in-person sales. So it's the dynamics for each market are significant. And if you're, I won't use the term lazy, because I write 800,000 to 1 million words a year, but going into each market and decrypting what has to happen in order to maximize profitability in each market with each distributor is so labor intensive that I do take the easy way out. I use Amazon because you can use Amazon ads. Now I'm paying them to find readers and then send them to me, and they make it easy. They make it easy to spend money with them. Facebook, on the other hand, I spend money with them on ads. They'll take your money and they have nothing to do with the sales. They just want to redistribute people from, hey, I'm browsing dog videos to all of a sudden I'm looking at a book about cats. All right, cool. And Amazon, they will serve it up. So I'd rather do an Amazon ad where people are more likely to buy because they're already on Amazon, and then dive over and take a look at that book that looks neat. And that's one thing I have never shirked on is covers. I have always spent whatever needed to be spent to get the absolute best covers I can get on my books, because that's the first window that people look at before they go over there and click on a book. And then the blurb actually sells the book. My blurbs have gotten better, and I've rewritten blurbs. I've done some blurbs 20 different times trying to find what's that magic mix to convince somebody to buy this book, or at least start reading it. And I'd like to think that my first chapter, my first paragraph, my first line is compelling enough that they keep reading and say, yeah, let me buy this. And that's the challenge that every author who also publishes themselves have. And that's a challenge that many traditional publishers are not up for, because they expect it. They might throw this book out there, but like Steve said, opening weekend. So they put this new book out there, and if it doesn't sell right away, what do? Your book languishes. I've got 4 books with an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and it sold great that first weekend. But since it's languished, I think my last royalty check was a couple $100 for 1 quarter. Okay,
that's actually better than some other authors. I mean, that's not bad, unfortunately.
Yeah, I gotta let the dog out. Hang on.
This is why I'm glad. I appreciate you inviting me to the panel, because I'm learning. This is, and I'm also incredibly depressed learning this. No, but I'm learning at the moment. That's why I was
think
just saying.
We're all learning here. This is great, because we learned the Hollywood stuff, because that, a lot of that is just not, you're the expert there. So this is great.
Well, as I was just saying, Craig, as you stepped away, I'm so happy that I was invited on this panel, because I'm learning. That was absolutely fascinating to me. I'm trying to make comparisons and corollaries to what's going on in my business as it shifts its foundation. And I have looked at some of those avenues that you just talked about. I had no idea that they were as complicated and as layered as what you just rather succinctly kind of explained out there. So,
and little things like you write a book, you write a series of books. That's cool. Well, you know who doesn't have series pages? Amazon's Canada page. So if you go to amazon.ca, they don't have series.
That's
so
true.
Why in the hell am I going to write a long series and try to sell it in Canada or Australia? Look at the product pages in Australia. Where do the ads go? Most of the product pages don't have ads in Australia. So I can't spend enough money to sell books in Australia. I love Lucy Lawless, by the way. My son married into Australia, so we've been there often to go down and see my son and his family.
Lucy would be the first one to tell you she's a Kiwi. She's New Zealand.
Is she?
Yeah. People would make that mistake, and she'd say, "No, can't walk to Australia from New Zealand."
Great. That's great. I didn't know that.
You can never call a New Zealander an Australian. I have a son-in-law who's from New Zealand, and I'm originally from Australia.
There you go. But the talent pool crosses.
We fight every year about pavlova. Who invented it?
But people make that it's an easy confusion, because our talent pool, obviously we mine from Australia, because there's an incredibly talented group of the people there, but the actors are just incredibly talented. So but I will tell you, the first time I ever heard Lucy in her original accent, it really threw me off.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah.
That's great. But the business is really, it's like there's all these sides that we gotta know. Like, if you're in the print business, meaning, and I put ebooks together with that, that's like a whole different ball. Because we gotta know all these little things. You need to know how to, besides the writing part, which we all know, now you need to do how to format it, present it, publish it, where to distribute it, how not to distribute it, because that's how they don't, there's a lot of do nots. Craig mentioned cover art, which is vital. Blurbs, cover art, your product page on each vendor. For example, on Amazon, all that nice stuff that you have to you have to put a lot of work into making that sound attractive to the reader so that they don't scroll past it in 3 seconds.
And a lot of this, I think it's interesting.
And you
the
also want
comparison.
something, oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead. No, you
You
go ahead.
also want something that you want the fans to follow you so that we know, oh, Craig has a new book coming out. Is it the series that I really like, or is it a new series that I might
Right.
want to try?
Yeah, that's that.
Because as you know, one of my
imprint.
favorites is Judge, Jury, and Executioner.
There
I
you
love
go.
Rivka. I love Rivka. I mean, did you make that into like a TV series? How would they, Red is the one that, okay, I really like that guy. He's just.
I like, and once again, this goes back to my love of Firefly. They curse them all for not having a second season.
Absolutely.
Adam Baldwin. Red is modeled after Adam Baldwin.
Oh,
Okay, that makes sense.
That's why he named his railgun, and
Yes.
always is armed up and armored and working out.
I think all of this is a representation also of the tectonic shift that the internet has had and the algorithms that are now being employed, because there's no publisher who handles all of that now. We aren't just the authors. There's no studio that handles all of that now. You, the author, because of the instant access you have, can assess all of this information, but it also means that the marketing crew can also do it, and they constantly shift. They're like border collies trying to adjust a huge flock. They're constantly running around trying to find the best shifting, whereas before we had this huge buffer where other people did this. One of the things I really admire about authors, and I found this up very earlier, when I was doing, whenever I do television, I'm working with the studios, they have their whole marketing arm, their whole publicity arm. I don't need to publicize my product. They're going to be doing it. They do it. One of the first things I learned when I got involved with Kevin, because Kevin and Rebecca are masters at this, is that you have to market yourself at all times. And I remember the first convention I did after I'd started writing prose, and somebody came up, and I was standing next to another author named Peter, and there was a little card that we had that had one of my upcoming projects. And so this guy comes up and he just compliments me on some of my television work. And I say, oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I feel somebody jabbing me. And so I'm like ignoring it, what's going on. And then the guy walks up, I turn to Peter, and what is that? He says, you hand him this, give him this. This is your upcoming material. This is your upcoming book. And I was like, well, no, he just came up to compliment me. I don't want to go into a salesman mode. And he goes, you always are in salesman mode. You have to do your own marketing.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing to have to learn sometimes, especially if you can be a really good writer, but if you're a shy person, that marketing face is really tough to develop. And some people never can manage that. And I feel bad for them in this current version of how do you become a published author is if you can't push yourself, how do you get your stuff out there?
If you can't dance on TikTok, what can you do?
Yeah. Allow me to read.
Yes,
I've got a question for Steve. Steve, I've done surveys of my readership, and the majority of my readers are women age 40 and older, and that's like 65, almost 70%. So how do you deal with, to get younger readers, how do you deal with language? Like, I don't use words like yeet, sus, or grok, and some of the stuff that seems to be prevalent now. I'm fairly active on Facebook with all age ranges, and I see them use these words, and I got no clue. And I know that if I don't write with at least one character using that language, so how do you deal with language, especially Hollywood, because they're looking for certain demographics when they're putting together a movie?
That is absolutely true, and that's a huge discussion, controversy in Hollywood. One of the biggest problems we have in Hollywood, especially, is ageism. Ageism, and it's the one thing that every culture, every diverse background has been guilty of this. It's kind of like we don't want to talk about it because we all do it.
Yeah.
And in Hollywood, yes, since you are supposed to be writing current for voices, you have to at least give, reality to that. Now, since it's a collaborative medium, at a certain point, like if I'm working with actors who are very young, I do my due diligence as best I can. Same thing when I'm writing women, I'm writing people of color. I can only go so far with my research, but I really go for it. The first thing I say is, I'm a straight white male, get used to it. You only have a certain prism, now try to work around that. But then when it goes up to collaboration, I will have people saying, it's a lot easier if I say this because that's what I say in my real life. And I'm like, go with it, let's put that in. But the challenge of that in my industry is that because it's such an interactive medium as far as networking, as far as getting your work, I walk into a room, my energy, and I do have a lot of energy when I go into a room. I'm a very, not necessarily gregarious in my personal life, but I go into improv. I was trained as an actor a long time ago, so I immediately get into my story and I pitch it. I have energy. Energy de-ages you a lot in this business. Mm-hmm. Only so far. But I was in a meeting one time, and it was a friendly meeting. It's not going to sound like it. And one of the people there, a younger person, mentioned that I would have a problem writing for a young market. He basically said, you have a problem writing for a 26-year-old. And I said, well, first of all, I want you to understand that most of my writing, despite whether it's sci-fi, fantasy, action, drama, adventure, if you look at everything I've written, it's always about character. Everything is about character. That's what I care about. That's what I love. Everything else is an interesting trapping and environment. But character, people don't care about the characters. They don't care what the environment is.
That's right.
So I always write that. And I said, that is the human condition. And it's something that I do study historically, psychologically. I am fascinated with that. I said, but let me put it more succinctly for you. I said, I can remember what it was like to be a 26-year-old. I dare you to remember what it's like to be a 60-year-old. And that got a really good laugh in the room, but they knew it was absolutely serious. I can remember what fumbling around, what I was doing back then. So my point, though, is that a good writer can transcend that. If you're a 26-year-old author, absolutely, you can write somebody my age if you know how to do it, if you're open to it, and if you accept the fact that you have a particular prism that you've got to get past and write that awareness. But yes, it's a lot harder in Hollywood to do that because you as a person automatically have that pushback before you even start writing.
This is fascinating, and it's really true. I'm glad you brought that up. Because the sensitivity reader thing is for the prose. We have that also in print, but that doesn't usually, that can be kind of glossed over, whatever the age of the author is, a little bit more, I think. But it does go into effect, because when you have to go out there and promote and people see you that you're no longer a spring chicken, what are they gonna, the impression that the publisher wants to make happen with you as the face of their whatever. So traditional publishing, I think it's worse, because here we are as an indie, you have more of a, like, this is up to me, I can do whatever I want. But in a traditional publishing situation, you are the face of the publisher in that sense. So,
and also remember who you're marketing to. I use children's books. You brought up children's books as a great example. Children's books, when they're done correctly, are written for the benefit of children. Children's books are never marketed to children, ever. They are not marketed to children. We know who they're marketed to.
Yeah,
they're marketed to, exactly. They're marketed to
grandma.
parents. Yeah, and that's the point. If they don't agree with it, the child will never experience it.
right.
Yeah, true. Okay.
There you go.
So
Oh, that's right.
Dinosaurs.
Yes,
I'm in.
There you go.
Dinosaur on the cover. See, that is my child reacting to that. I'm in.
Yeah, it
But
must be hard to promote that, right? You were at the Comic-Con. I remember you posting something like it was just not easy to promote that book.
At the Arctic Comic-Con down in Anchorage, it did not. However, I sold a lot of copies at the Alaska Comic-Con up in Fairbanks.
Right.
So it's just different markets, and also people just simply weren't buying down in Anchorage this year.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that one is only available for direct sale because the only reasonable price I could get was on an offset print, and bought 250 copies offset print for me, and they're in my garage. And I do direct sales, and they work great. And I charge $25 a copy before shipping. So I mean, you may say, well, you're pricing yourself out of the market. I bought 250 copies. Tell me what kind of market. I actually wrote it for my grandkids who are 4 and 6,
Yeah.
and everything else. I mean, if I sell a bunch of copies on the side, great. But it is exactly that. It's written for the children must enjoy it, but you're selling it to the parents. So that's it. I mean, the whole story is like the human condition. Be yourself. Okay. Now here's a whole story. Half of it is the story, and the other half is a coloring book, just in case they weren't gripped by the story and just wanted dinosaurs. So
Right.
I hedged my bet there. And,
I like that.
But that's another way to do it. So I do direct sales. I've got I sell through BookFunnel, which is another way with audiobooks. A different way, I've gone exclusive with ACX. I have audiobooks with Dreamscape, with Findaway, now Spotify, as well as Podium. I mean, I have played all sides.
Craig,
Yeah.
do you sell direct? Do you sell those physical copies through BookFunnel, or is it a Shopify?
No,
or something?
out of my garage and USPS.
Oh, literally just okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've got the files, and I had it done in I could put it on Amazon and go with their color book pricing, and Ingram, the color book pricing, but that discount, I really despise the forced discount on Ingram because, well, they're dealing with
Well, the
retailers.
returns and the returnable, the 55% wholesale discount plus returnable makes it almost impossible for an indie, because what are you going to do with the returns? I mean, you can have them strip and just, destroy, but you're still losing money. It's crazy. You're losing anything that is printed comes out of your pocket. It's horrible.
My traditional publishing books, I sold a bunch of those, doing great, and then all of a sudden I got like a $1,300 charge back because they hit the 2 years on the contract, and a bunch of bookstores sent them back. So I ate that for one of the quarterly royalties, which then of course that was zero.
Wow.
And then some, because of the you can return the book. And now with having that available, and that's a traditional publishing model, it shifts the risk to the publisher and not the retailer, which was required so the retailers didn't go under. They didn't want to take all that risk. Now, in some cases, they will. Local Barnes & Noble, they carry a lot of my books here, even though I only sell them through Amazon print. Those aren't returnable for Barnes & Noble, but they carry them anyway because I'm a popular local author. It's Fairbanks, Alaska. There's 30,000 people here. I've sold 1 million books, which puts me in the 1/1000th of 1% of Alaskan authors. It's a neat place, but still it's. Nobody owes me anything, and they're not willing to take the risk anywhere else, and the return is just absolutely brutal. And I'm a big fan of the direct sales from Amazon or direct out of my garage. Nobody's going to ship a book back to me, for Pete's sake.
Well, I hate to interrupt everybody, but we've come to the end of our time, so I wanted to thank everybody. And if you've got any last remarks you want to make, go for it. Anybody?
I thanks for having me, Vera, and I will send you an email, Steve, as soon as I take my dog out, and with an invite to 20 Books Vegas and what we can offer you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, I love this experience. This is great. I always
so much.
well, the marketing aspect and the talking about the creative aspects and everything is one thing I always describe about a really well-run writer's room, and I will describe it about this. It's kind of like those big inflatable castles you see at kids' parties, where you just basically jump into the bouncy room and everybody throws something and we all catch it and we have fun with it and throw back. And I refer to a good story session as being a creative bouncy room. And this is a combo of story and information. And it's been a great little bouncy room. So thank you for inviting me into the castle.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
You have been amazing, both of you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon. And for the convention people, our next panel is at 1:45. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, 1:45, we're doing a chat. So be sure and join us for that. And you guys are welcome to join the fan chats if you'd like. We can send you a link. So thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you
great
guys. Thank you.
afternoon.
You guys were great. I appreciate
Thank
it
you.
so much. Take care.
Take care.